And three, two, one. We have Kevin Wathey on. Am I saying your last name
It's
right? Wathey?
Wathey, but ever since I was a kid, I get Wathey. In high school, I got Wathey for a while, and then I got Watley. But there's no L in the name, so I don't know where the hell that comes from. But
You were like, I'll just throw an L on it.
but yeah, Wathey is great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on Yogi Bryan Talks. I'm excited to have you on. I was on your podcast, which is amazing. We're going to link that up. We're going to talk about that. But how is it going today?
It is going great, and I want to say thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. We had a great talk when you were on the Synchronicity show, so I'm excited to see where this kind of part two of Yogi Bryan and Kevin conversation goes.
Yes. Yeah. I love your vibe, man. I love your vibe. I saw you on Instagram. I think it was maybe like a year or two ago. I saw you on Instagram just coming up on my feed with your synchronicity yoga. And then I actually went to one of your classes. And I think it was like after I just interviewed DJ Taz Rashid, and you came up to me after class. You're like, hey, I saw that interview and he's my friend. I've gone to Wanderlust with him and whatnot. And I loved your class at the time. And then it's just been like a friendship that's grown ever since. So cool to have you on.
Yeah, I remember that. It was at the old Life Power location off of Shea, and I was like, "Hey, this guy looks familiar. I think I just saw something with him that he did back, whatever." And then after class, I was like, "Hey, you teach at Lifetime in Tempe, right?" "Oh yeah, it is you."
Yeah, small world, right? Just connecting the dots. Yeah. So
Yeah,
cool. And
I
then yeah, I was
love.
looking at your website and then I saw your story, and your story like really like hit me. Like it just hit me in the gut. And like meeting you, I just knew you're a genuine person. Like I felt a good vibe from you, a good energy. But after reading your story, I was like, oh wow, like you're on your purpose. Like you're really out here on your purpose, like sharing it, sharing your practice, helping the world. So tell us about your story. Tell the listeners about your story. How did you start the yoga journey?
Yeah, so in order to kind of make sure all the dots connect, we got to take it back to the beginning, and as far back as makes sense, and that would probably be in high school for me. So if you were to talk to me in high school, me 15, 16, 17 years old, and say, hey, you're going to be a yoga teacher when you grow up, you're going to run a wellness company, travel the world sharing this, I would have been like, the hell are you talking about? There's no way. That was never a path or anything that was planned for in my life. Mindfulness was never an aspect. None of that would have ever crossed my mind.
At 15, right?
Yeah, at
What
15.
were you doing at 15 though? Like, did you have a trapper keeper? Like, what was going
Yeah.
on
So,
there?
so at 15, 16, my goal was to play in the NHL, to play professional hockey. I grew up around sports. My dad was the announcer for the Phoenix Coyotes when they moved down here from Winnipeg. So that was 93 through 96. So I grew up around the team. I played hockey ever since I had skates on before I could even remember walking, I think. And so I always wanted to play sports. And I even went to a high school out of my district so I could play hockey with on a team, because the high school that was in my district didn't have a team. Growing up in Arizona, you would think, hockey in Arizona, what the hell's going on?
Right.
But it ended up being, we had a pretty good team. We won state the first 2 years. So fast forward to my senior year of high school. It would have been my junior year of high school. My mom had run a triathlon, had back pain, and didn't know what it was. She thought she had hurt herself in the triathlon, and she went to go get an MRI, and it came back that she had stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Mm.
Literally from a healthy mid-40s adult to been giving 3 months to live is me at 16 years old. That's what I was. My mom sat us down on the couch and she goes, hey, this was right after Christmas, December 2009. Sat us down on the couch and said, hey, just wanted to let you know. Just wanted to let you know is a kind of easy way to put it, but this is what has come up. And I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's metastasized to different organs in my body. My doctor gave me 3 months to live. I want to let you know that I'm going to spend one more Christmas with you, is what she said.
Mm.
And, me at that age, you're like, That's great. First of all, I didn't even accept the circumstances of what was happening. Like, you don't, at that age, you don't think. You're like, oh, that's cool. I remember her having the conversation and being like, yeah, whatever. That's not going to happen. And then like went to a party that night. But that was the very first kind of like, and then we can get into kind of the path that I took after things took a turn for the worse. But diving straight into alcohol and drugs was the first path for me, because that was like to numb myself. But instinctually, I didn't realize it at the time. It was just like, oh, I'm going to go to a party to suppress this. You're not that conscious or aware of your body at that age. You're like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's what we're just going to do. That's normal kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like you're the only medicine that you can find for yourself for the pain.
Exactly.
Like drugs and alcohol, party, your people connected to you, and unless you grow up in an environment where it's like you're surrounded with people who are already conscious of themselves and aware of their own beings and their body, you're not taught that. Like, school doesn't teach you that. Your friends don't teach you that. You're like exploring this kind of ever-changing world, but you don't have the tools in place in order to kind of thrive. You have all these things that can suppress you, but nothing to really elevate you past a certain point. Right? Yeah. 100%. You're like, where is this geometry that I learned in high school? Like, where's this geometry helping me out right now?
What does X actually mean? What does X? Who solved X?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, why is there letters in my math? Like, that should be separate. That's a different podcast, but that needs to happen. That conversation.
So she was diagnosed. I went to a party that night. I told my friends, and they're like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, oh, nothing's going to happen. It's fine. Fast forward to the most difficult next 12 months of my life, where you don't actually know the scope of what the human body can go through until you see someone go through something so dramatic and so physically and emotionally altering, where you put that first day and then you put the last day, the last breath she took on this planet side by side, and that's not the same person. And you can't comprehend the change that a single cell mutation can make in your body and then compound itself day after day over the course of what it was a year. But to kind of, long story short, she passed away December 26th, 2010. So
she made it to Christmas.
Wow. So she spent Christmas with us. She passed away at 10 a.m. at home with us the day after Christmas. And at the time, I didn't recognize the significance of that. Reflecting back on it now, it is, I can tell anyone that story, and there's not a way that you can't realize the power of your mind and the power of your own mindset, and how everything that you do in life is either a positive or a negative, and how you interpret it is dependent on how you approach life. And everything that you do either sets you up for success or takes you back into a negative. And it's your own mindset and your own mind that does that. So to basically have someone tell you that, hey, I'm going to spend one more Christmas with you, but then every doctor that she went to said you have 3 months to live. How does that happen? Like, how do you justify that? And that's been the kind of like deepest question I've had, is like, how does this happen? But we don't fully understand how the mind works, or how crazy it is that what we have in our heads controls everything else in our life. It controls our life. It controls other people's lives. It controls how much money we have, how much money we don't have. It controls where we live, where we travel to, how we approach things, how we experience the world. All of that is conditioned through our mind. And it's up to us to find positive ways to rewire our own thinking to advance us to the next level. Does that kind of make sense?
Point. Yeah, that makes sense. That hits me hard. It's really, really profound. And we probably end the show right now after this, like that. No, that it's so true how your mind, like it's so powerful, you know? And all the doctors saying, you know, and then she makes it to the day after Christmas, which is
literally 10
wow.
hours after the clock changed to December 26th.
Wow.
But it's looking back, you're like, okay, she had a reason. And so a good way, something that I read a couple of years ago that really struck home and kind of solidified the same point is a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yes, I just
Which,
got that book after talking with you on your podcast.
oh yeah, I remember
Yeah,
we
I
did
did.
talk about that. It is insane because for anyone listening, and I won't ruin the book for you, but he is an Auschwitz survivor. And he talks about how if you have a reason for living, if you have a basically a why or a how, you can overcome any what. Or I think that's what it was. If you have a reason, you can overcome anything, essentially, is the way that he approached it. And if you then relate that back to the story of my mom, she had a reason. She told us, which her word was impeccable. There is not a single person in the world that can tell you that my mom said something to you that she didn't follow through on. And that's something that I've tried to live my life on moving forward now. That's like, if I tell you I'm going to do something, you don't have to worry because I will find a way to do it if that's the last thing I ever do, kind of thing, because it was instilled in me at such a young age and I recognized that within her. But then to relate that back, she had a reason that entire year. She goes, I'm going to prove this to myself, to my family, to my kids. December 26th rolls around. I've achieved my goal. It is okay for me. Which taught me the biggest lesson. That was the hardest moment of my life, but probably one of the best moments of my life because it taught me and made me become the man who I am today. And like I'm tearing up now speaking about it, but it just further solidifies and proves that within every negative is a positive. You just have to be open and willing to look for it. I feel like I say that a lot, but it's so true because the worst thing, that is the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. Everything else that's happened to me is self-imposed problems.
Right.
That is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I can 100% tell you it is also one of the best things that's ever happened to me because of the way I've reframed it and choose to now look at it.
Reframe and choose to how you look at it. That's so important and so powerful. And it's like, look at what you're doing now. Like you're helping so many people. You're doing your retreats. You have your, your yoga classes that you're teaching, and like the story that you share. Like, it's like one of the biggest fears of people is like losing their loved ones. And to see that year in suffering. That's traumatic and that's painful. And it's like, which way do you go? I mean, like you chose the path to inspire and help people, but it's like, it is such a painful journey, but I'm sure you could say like the pain, like going through the painful journey, like actually walking through the painful journey without drugs and alcohol. We'll have to get back to like how you got into like the yoga after drugs and alcohol, but like I've suffered drugs and alcohol as well. Like it's such an easy fix, like at least temporarily. It's like, oh, I could I could drink or I could do this, and like it's temporary. I feel good for now, but then man, that pain comes back
It
5,
stops
10
working
times
at some point.
worse.
Yeah
That pain comes back eventually. So like how did you walk through the pain and get into yoga?
So kind of like I had hinted at, it initially didn't lead me down. Like I initially took what would be the probably road more traveled, the drug and alcohol path. And I mean, so not initially. So immediately following, I should say, to connect the dots still, immediately following her passing, I was playing hockey in high school. I had quit my hockey team. I basically partied every single night, just like for that like last 6 months, they gave me a bye in my senior year of high school. I didn't have to show up anymore. So I just used that as an excuse to like, it was awesome at the time, but then I was also like, I had no rigidity or schedule. I'd say I'm going to school and then I would just go out and smoke and drink and go hang out with my friends and do all this stuff that wasn't helping me in any way at all. But then one day I was sitting in school and I got a call. I was in 4th hour math class and my phone rang and it was some random number. And normally I don't answer the phone if it's a random number, but thank God I did this day because it was Shane Doan who had called me, the captain of the Coyotes.
Yeah.
And he called me and he said, he knew a friend of a friend who told him about my story. And he said that I want to tell you that I understand what you're going through. Everyone faces difficult times in their life, but you made a commitment to your team. It doesn't matter what you do after the season or what you do later in your life. I don't give a shit about that. But what matters is the commitment that you made, because all you have is your word. And you need to finish out this commitment you made with your team and then do whatever you want. And that hit me. And I was like, oh, fuck, what am I doing? I have to now live up to the commitment that I made. So I decided to go back. That was some of the best hockey I had ever played. Those last 4 or 5 months of the season or whatever. It was like February through May. It was like 3 months maybe. After that, then I got selected to go try out for a junior team, which is like the intermediary for hockey. You go from playing like travel team growing up to junior, which is kind of like, think of it as like semi-pro before you would go into either NCAA or professionals. And so I got chosen to go try out for a team. We were playing at Robert Morris University and I ended up getting selected for the team, which then completely altered the rest of my life. At 17, or I had just turned 18, moved across the country, graduated high school, moved to Florida to go play for a junior team for 2 years. And that was, you got to grow up real quickly. So it was a blessing and a curse because at the time it was exactly what I wanted. And I dove straight into hockey. The problem was I never allowed myself to grieve my mother's passing. So I was constantly working towards something. I was in the gym twice a day. I was skating. I was like surrounded by a team, but then hockey was like, don't show emotions. You're fine. You got everything. Right, yeah. You're good. Everything that you do is fine. And then the first year was great, but then I wasn't progressing and getting as good as I wanted to like move up the ranks and join a better team. So then the second year I was like, I'm not going to try as hard. I'm going to start drinking again. Because the first year I didn't drink. Second, I drank maybe once or twice the first year. The second year I drank every single weekend and then during the week. And then while I was playing and like, it just constantly progressed. And then eventually I was like, you know what? This isn't as fulfilling anymore. I'm going to come back and I'm going to come back to, I had moved to LA first and then back to Arizona, but I started acting because all the friends I had that were partying were like, oh yeah, we're actors, we're models, we're kind of thing. And I had been modeling a little bit on and off here and there. So like, why don't you start acting with us? And I had auditioned for some shows and like, it was more of like it was like a cathartic experience because it allowed me to release emotion without experiencing the own hurt that I had within me.
I see. Were you taking acting classes?
I was. And I saw that you're doing improv now too.
Yeah, we'll have to get into that. That's so cool because yeah, acting really helps with emotional, you have to get in certain emotional states. So that's interesting.
So I was going to Deering Acting Studio in Phoenix. Shout out Matt Deering if you're listening. Right? And so I started doing a Meisner scene study class or a Meisner class, a scene study class, and then an improv class. And I was literally doing the full gambit. I was going every single night. It was this like cathartic thing that allowed me to experience, but I wasn't dealing with my own emotions. I was dealing with this character or someone else. It allowed me to feel, which was great because I was releasing, but I wasn't dealing with my own shit. And I see.
Were you able to like fake cry pretty good? Like, were you able to cry up there?
I don't know if it was fake. I don't know if it was fake cry. Like I actually was releasing emotions in these scenes that I was doing and I would feel better momentarily, but it was like a quick fix. It almost felt like.
I see. Okay.
And so then I was acting and then my dad was like, well, if you're not going to go to school, don't ever call me for help later in life. Cause I wasn't going to university and he's very much like, get a degree, get a job, kind of do the traditional approach. Yeah. So I was like, all right, well, shit, I'll go to school, but I'm going to go for theater. So I went to school for theater, and I was really interested in psychology at the time because of acting and how that ties into itself. And so I went to school and I went to school for theater and then started taking acting classes, as well as taking some psychology classes. And it was my second year at ASU. I got asked to go to Bali, Indonesia for an acting intensive. And I was like, all right, this is cool. I've never left the country before. I don't know why Bali. I never even heard of Bali before this. And I always joke, like, we put Bali on the map because now everyone knows about Bali and they have to go. And
yeah, it's because of you, man. Great.
So I decided to go just kind of on a whim. I didn't have the money to do this. I took out a credit card. I put the flight and the training on a credit card. And just next thing you know, summer, I was on a flight to Southeast Asia. And I had been introduced to yoga as part of like the like the warm-up sequence of acting. It was like, before you go on stage, let's warm up your body. Let's warm up your breath. Let's do a little yoga. But it wasn't anything more than that. But when I was in Bali, they had a 6 a.m. yoga class every single day where we were staying in this kind of compound we were staying at. And I don't know what called me to take it or why I wanted to take it or what it was, but I went to that yoga class every single day at 6 a.m. And right around, I don't know, second to third week, I remember I did the class. I was laying in Shavasana and I started bawling. I couldn't stop crying. Like I'm tearing up thinking about it now. I legitimately could not stop crying. And I sat up and I looked at my vocal production coach and I saw my mom and her, and I just lost my fucking mind.
Wow. Do you know like what happened before the crying? Like when you're in Shavasana, like, did you know, like, or did it just like the emotion just hit you?
I just took a breath. Like I took a breath, and I think like looking back on it now, I think I was just perpetually holding everything. I was like, don't do anything, be strong, hold this, hold that. And I think I actually allowed myself to take a full breath for the first time in like, what was it, 8 years or something like that. Allowed myself, it wasn't that long, like 5 years, allowed myself to take a full breath. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I sat up, I saw my teacher, I saw my mom in her, lost my mind. And the people that were there at that acting intensive were some of like the most open and accepting people that I've ever met in my life.
I love that.
I flew back to the States after I was there for over a month, and I flew back to the States and I was like, where do I meet more people like this? Like this is not the people that I've been hanging out with up to this point in my life. These are not the same people. And I was living in Tempe at the time, going to ASU. I looked up yoga schools and I enrolled in a 200-hour teacher training at SWIHA, Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, probably a month or two after getting back from Bali. And, you know, the rest was history from there.
I love that. I love that. That is such like just shows how therapeutic, yoga can be. Mm-hmm. And it's cool how like you were just called to it. You're just called to, you don't have to go take yoga when you're on this acting. Was anybody else doing yoga in your acting class, or was it just you in the class?
I want to say probably like half to 3/4 of our group that was there was taking the yoga classes. I don't want to say religiously, but they were taking more than a few of them.
I see. Amazing. And now you got your own retreats. Now you got a retreat coming up in Costa Rica. Looks amazing too. So yeah, so you go have this awesome experience, and you wanted to find this like-minded people that you felt this connection with. So yeah, like what was and then you went to SWIHA, you did your training, which you're giving a lot of shout outs. You got SWIHA and then Deering Acting Studio, man. You really know that product placement in your stories.
Yeah, awesome. There we go. Where can I give credit where credit is due is
exactly.
is my thought process. But yeah, I took my 200 hour, and I had Casey Miller, she runs Sweeha. Originally we were going to have another teacher, but she got sick right when our 200 hour started. So Casey and Will Zecco took over our 200 hour teacher training because out of necessity. We were like in week 2, and our main teacher had gotten sick, and like she was out for the remainder of the training. The one benefit that I had, and I say this because like the accumulation of our experiences is really what makes us who we are. And that's why I say all of the negatives that have happened to me are awesome. At the time when I was acting, I was like, great, I can use this and I can call on this for this character I'm going to play, kind of thing. But looking back, and you realize that everything leads you to the path or the point that you're supposed to be at. And so with that in mind, because of my hockey background and because of my athletic background, I knew anatomy and physiology pretty well. So I started teaching a class at Sweeha, I think the 2nd or 3rd month into my 6-month training. So before I had my certification, they had thrown me in to the wolves, so to speak, to begin teaching my first class at Sweeha.
That's so cool. Just threw you in there.
Which is, if you know my personality, that fits me perfectly. I'm like, give me it all. Let's see if I can swim. So it was awesome because it allowed me to recognize how much I liked. I don't know if it was that I liked teaching initially, or if I liked being in a place of supposed power, or in a place that's kind of like,
I love that you're aware of that. I love that you question and you're aware of that, because it's like, you like teaching, or you like that authority of just like everybody, you kind of have like control of the room and control of the energy.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of like, figure out what it is, then ask yourself why. And we talked about this when we had you on the show as well, was kind of just ask yourself why, like 5 times, 7 times, whatever it is, and boil it down to what really matters to you and why. Because I feel like in our current society, a lot of things are conditioned, and a lot of things that we talk about and discuss and are told to like is just that. We're told to like it. So we think that that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to do this. The hell is supposed to mean? There's no supposed to, because if there was, that would mean everyone's supposed to fit into some kind of cookie cutter, when that's not how it is. And I really appreciate what you put out there in the world, because you're unapologetically who you are. And like, you don't give a fuck either way, which is awesome to see, because there's so many people who are not that, and I still am notorious for trying to I'm trying to be aware of it, but then I also go down the path. So no one's perfect at all, and I'm not claiming to be, but I think that recognizing it and awareness is the first step in change. So to have the awareness and to say, I wonder why I enjoyed teaching from the beginning. Do I actually enjoy teaching, or is it something that's like, I'm now in charge of people. This is a cool feeling.
Right? Yeah.
Even though you're not, but you just like, your ego tells you are.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something where I struggle. I wouldn't say struggle, but I question it daily. Like, what's my motive here? Like, even as a teacher now, it's like, okay, like my motive needs to be to like hold space for these students. Like that's my motive here. Like, I need to go hold space for the students, and I need to like see what they need, but there's been times where I've taught a class where it was all ego and it was all me, and it was all like, I want to talk the whole fucking time and share like my cool wisdom that I learned on YouTube like 2 days ago, So it's just really like a constant everyday thing. Like, what's my motive? That's why I loved, when I was talking to you on your show about the, asking yourself 5 times. And you said you had a program about that, right?
That's any client, because Synchronicity now has multiple divisions. So any client that comes to work with us or for us, in any faculty, whatever it ends up being, they go through a 7 steps to why worksheet. So it's you figure out what it is you're trying to accomplish. So if you're going through our consulting program, which would be how to online client acquisition for wellness entrepreneurs, module 1, step 1, day 1, 7 steps to why worksheet. If you're on our media division and you want media buying in Facebook or YouTube ads or something like that, why do you want to accomplish these goals? 7 steps to why worksheet right there, no matter what it is. And then if you attend one of our retreats, very first day, you're not doing a worksheet, but that's the first question you're going to get asked.
It's so important too. That's like the foundation. Like, why are you someplace? Like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You know, because if you don't know why you're here, like, you don't know where you're going to go.
Exactly. If you don't know why you're here, and if you don't know what you want to accomplish, how do you expect to accomplish anything?
100%. It like makes me think about when I go hiking, right? When you go hiking, you're like, you are here right now. So it's like, cool, I'm right here. So then you can like figure out which trail to go on. And then you can get lost from there if you want to, but at least you know where you started.
Then you need a watch to point you back to where do I park the car?
Exactly. And you can always change the plan too. That's what like I've learned. People have told me. It's like, okay, you know where you're at right now. So you know your motive, you know where you're at. We'll just develop a plan, like figure out where you want to go. But you can always change that plan. If it's not working out for you, if that's not where you want to go, change it. It's not a big deal.
100% agree.
But yeah, so you got so when a client comes up, they do that worksheet. And then like where else would you take them?
So it really depends what they're coming to us for help with. If it's something in the yoga space, then that's kind of working with them. I mean, everything is case by case. And I like that a lot because of the authenticity factor in it. And I feel like a lot of people, especially, and I say people generalizing a bit here, but I think that in the online space, especially, and in elements of yoga, people think they need to fit this mold, or that one size fits all approach is the way you need to go. And I reject that 100%, because everything, like what's right for me is not right for you, and what's right for you is not right for me. So how can I put you into this square box kind of thing, And
right.
in everything that we do, granted, there is some overlap in different areas, like say consulting, online client acquisition. Yes, there's overlap in the way that you systemize and the way you set up things. But in terms of how you're going to communicate with your perfect client, it's going to be completely different because it's based on your personality. How do you show up in the world? What resonates with you? What resonates with the clients you're most willing and dedicated to serve? You need to understand that, because then that determines how you're going to approach them, how you're going to market to them, how you're going to speak to them, how you're going to attract them. So it really is that you start with the why, and then the why answers the questions. It's not something that I can say next step would be this, because we haven't done the why worksheet here. There's no way to answer that question without first diving into the specifics of what makes you tick and why.
I love that. Yeah. Figuring out what makes you tick and why, and then you can figure out where to go next.
Exactly.
And where they're going to go next is Costa Rica, right? Nosara, Costa Rica. Tell me about this.
Nosara, Costa Rica was the first international retreat I ever ran. So 5 years ago, I was still teaching weekly classes at the time. I only stopped teaching weekly classes about a year ago. And I was still teaching weekly classes at the time, but I wanted to find a way to connect deeper with my students. And I saw people running retreats, and I was like, that would be great. How do we do this? How do I take people somewhere cool? And my first thought was, why don't I take them to Sedona, Arizona? So Sedona's close. For those of you
Smart. You
listening
drive there.
who are familiar with Arizona, you can drive there. It's 2 hours. It's like a yoga mecca essentially. And so I was like, all right, cool. We're going to run a retreat in Costa Rica. Where are we going to stay? How are we going to do this? And rather than like, I'm the kind of person who's like I said before, like throw me into the deep end. I'll show you that I can swim. I was like, all right, cool. I started selling spots for a retreat that didn't exist yet. For the very first one. And I sold that out in, I want to say the first week for dates that were eight weeks later without having a house to hold this retreat at.
What? That is pretty badass.
So I was trying to figure out where we're going to host this retreat. And this will all tie into Costa Rica in a second. So I was trying to figure out where I'm going to host this retreat. So I drove up there with a friend of mine and we went and toured a couple of resorts, which were too expensive. And then we tried to tour this house, which was a piece of shit. And then we stumbled upon this other house that literally has a yoga room in the house. It sleeps 12 people. It was exactly what we were looking for. And I was like, okay, cool. How do I book this? There were still five weeks to go. And they were like, well, here's the rate. And I was like, I don't like that. They're like, well, that's the rate. I was like, well, that's not what we're paying. That's not what I'm going to pay. And I'm going to be coming here for the next foreseeable future. So I literally negotiated for the next 4 weeks. And I only solidified the price and booked it like 4 days before everyone was supposed to show up on day one of the retreat.
Wow. That's freaking ballsy, man.
So they showed up day one, but I hadn't kind of done the logistics of how to run the retreat yet. I was like, all right, I'm going to allot this much for food. I'm going to allot this because this was a house. So like we cooked communally, and it was now the retreats I run are very much like luxury kind of soup to nuts, everything taken care of for you. This was very much, I'm doing everything. And that's great, but there's pros and cons to it. And so then I didn't make a good profit on the first one. So I was like, all right, back to the drawing board. How can I spin this, flip this to make good money off of the weekend long Sedona retreat? I reran that same retreat 3 months later, killed it.
Awesome.
Made 5 figures from that first retreat. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm on to something. How can I now scale this up and triple my money? Because that was not in terms of the money matters, but how can I do this in a business sense to make this? Because obviously a business needs money to operate. And if you have money and you're able to have the right morality and ethos behind it, you can affect change and help people on a much, much larger scale.
Yes.
That's people think in the wellness world, especially in yoga, that money is like the root of all evil. No.
Yeah, I want to come back to this too. Like, this is a good point too. So after your story, I want to come back to this just about how you like money and yoga. So yeah, continue on. We'll come back to that.
Gotcha. So then I was like, how can I scale this? How can I make it bigger? All right, we need to go international. We need to make it a week long. Because right now it's a Friday through a Monday. So it's like 4 days, 3 nights. How do I do 8 days, 7 nights? And then a friend had run a retreat to Costa Rica, said, I know this great place. Let me connect you with them. They connected me, and I literally just picked dates on the calendar. And I was like, all right, let's go that Saturday to that Saturday, booked. And I just put it on the business credit card. And I was like, I'll sell this out. Literally sold that retreat out in the next month, right after that.
Wow. So cool. And inspiring too.
You're on to something. And then the thing is, now we have programs to teach people how to run retreats and things like that, and how to make 6 figures a year running retreats. But the thing that still baffles me to this day is like, I'm the kind of person who's like, let's just jump into it and do it. If you fail, you fail, but failure is not really failure because I don't quit. So you're failing, but it's a test. It's a trial kind of thing, which is not how a lot of people approach trial and error. They think that if they get it wrong, they failed and that they've let someone down. No, if you fail, you now know what doesn't work. So now revise it and find out what does. That's
100%.
So that's exactly what we did. And then we ran Costa Rica, and then we expanded. And then the next one we ran was Bali, which Bali, coming full circle for me, was a really, really cool experience. And
going back to
it was the first time I had been back since discovering yoga. I say discovering yoga there. And I connected with one of the locals, Wayan Tawan, who I had met 5 years prior when I was there the first time. And
should we tag his Instagram too?
We can
shout out.
Yeah. I don't know if he's still on Instagram, but I can send it to you if I can find him.
Sure.
And something that I won't give you the specifics of it because you have to attend the Bali retreat in order to go, but it's a special ceremony that you can only go to if you know a local. Like they only set it up if you know people who are there, and then basically a whole village performs for you, but it's the special thing that goes along with it. So I reached out to him because that was such an impactful experience for me years prior that I wanted to bring my retreat group and have them experience that too. So he picks us up in a van the first night, or not the first night, the last night, takes our entire group. I shouldn't say entire group. We were running light there because a handful of people had Bali belly. That's the only problem. If you haven't traveled extensively, you got to be careful what you eat. Takes us to this ceremony, brings us back, boom, hangs out with us, sits down with us, has a meal with us. And I remember him specifically because I used to wear glasses when I was there. And he goes, you're not the same man with glasses before. I really appreciate the man who you've become. And that moment for me was one of those, like those are the indescribable moments that you can't like put a word on, because it wasn't something that was ever intentional. Like I never set out to become who I am or to bring, I never set out to bring people to Bali. It's just like that synchronistically, to name drop the company, fell into my lap. And then to see it come full circle was something that was so special to experience, and to have someone else, another being who I haven't spoken to in 5 years, recognize that from like, I met him, I left his world for 5 years. And then 5 years later, I come back with a group of 20 people to teach them yoga in his hometown. Yeah. It's something that I can't explain.
It's your company name right there.
Yeah.
Synchronicity. That is.
But to backtrack for a second, because the business side of things, which a lot of people don't understand or recognize, that is, I feel very passionately about, is people confuse money or I don't know the best way to structure it, but they think of in a wellness space that I cannot make money from a gift I'm giving people, or I cannot make money because I'm helping people heal, because there's something wrong with that. But then if you take a step back and you realize that if you don't make money, you can't then help more people. The more money you make, the more people you can help. But then to take that one step further, if you don't charge for what you're offering, you subconsciously devalue the product. So if I was to give you, they did a study on wine. They give you a bottle of wine. They say it's $5 wine and that's $70 wine. It's the exact same bottle. They just tell the people it's different. So now back to your mind, how strong your mind is. The people who drank the $70 bottle of wine reported higher satisfaction, greater fulfillment, and they said their food tasted better. Because of their mind, because they assumed that it's more money, so that they should get more pleasure out of it. So now if you relate that to in the wellness space, I'm teaching you yoga, I'm teaching you meditation, I'm taking you on a retreat. You show up and you spend $20 for an event somewhere, you're not going to get the same experience. If you say, oh, I had to give this amount of money, and it's because money is nothing but an energetic exchange. You need to give something to get something. If you don't feel like you've lost something in exchange for what you're getting in return, then you're not going to appreciate what it is that you've gotten. That's the biggest thing. And my first introduction to understanding this was a friend of mine who's a meditation teacher. He charges 2 weeks salary to learn meditation, 2 weeks salary. What is that for you? If you make 100 grand a year or 1 million, that's way different. When you then figure out what 2 weeks is, and you realize that 2 weeks is the amount that someone needs to exchange in order to see the benefit and to see that energetic exchange as something that's valuable to them, doesn't matter. It's the money. The number is not what matters. What matters is that they, in their own mind, convince their subconscious that what they're getting is of value. It's all perceived value. It's not actual value. Nothing in life has actual value. Everything in life is all perceived, and it's your perception that sets the price. That's why people come to me for the consulting program all the time. I don't know what to name my online program, or I don't know what to price my online program. I go, well, make it up and see if it works. Like, start out.
See, I love that about you, because like, you just do it. And like, I'm very similar. And like, I try and tell so many people, like, you know, that want to like build a brand or whatever, like, you got to fucking do it. Like, you got to jump in and do it. And then you learn like along the way. And that's what's so cool about you. Like, your retreat, you just freaking did it without even having like a spot. You sold out, and then you figure it out along the way. And then then you get to Bali, you get to freaking Costa Rica. But I love what you're saying about the money aspect.
If you break everything down, business is overcoming objections. Life is overcoming objections. Most people they hold these objections that people give them on too high a pedestal. But if you replace the word objection with complaint, you stop giving the same light of day to everything that people tell you. They say, you can't do that. Okay, cool. Nice complaint. Sorry, but I'm going to prove you're wrong. If they say that's too difficult, yeah, it's going to be hard. Nobody said it was going to be easy. And as a matter of fact, the more effort you put into something that is perceived to be difficult, the better reward you are going to get, because your mind rewards you based on effort, not based on what you accomplish. That's how your mind works. Your mind doesn't release dopamine because you got the latest car. Your mind releases dopamine because you worked hard enough to be in a place where you can afford that car.
Yeah. So good. So true. Love it. I'm selfish with my podcast. I bring guests on that I actually want to learn about. And then, but I want to learn stuff, like, especially this stuff, especially retreat stuff. You know, things are opening. Things are going to be opening up. You know, people are going to be traveling. I see a lot more retreats, you know, being booked. And, you know, I know a lot of yoga teachers, people in this industry that are listening to this, like, really need to hear this, you know, because money is so like it's just so weird with yoga, at least for me. You know, it's like you said, well, I'm making people feel better. Like, I just feel weird. You know, at first I felt weird to charge for this. Like, oh, I should do like free yoga, you know, yoga at the park for free or whatever. But it's like you said, people do not value, or like in your subconscious mind, it's like you're devaluing the product. My teacher, David Snyder, I do a lot of training with him. He was talking about, like, when you pay to do training, or when you pay to go do something, he's like, make sure it's like stretched out, you know, make sure it's like something that might be like kind of expensive. Like, you might even have to go into debt for it. Like, I don't really like debt myself, but he was just saying it as an example, because like, if you're putting money into it, like, you're like, oh shit, like, I put a lot of money into this. Like, I really need to focus on it. Like, I actually need to follow through. And it just like made me think about what I'm spending money on in terms of training, you know, or like, you know, like something that's extending a little past, like, I maybe can afford it, but like, that's going to be a little tough for me. Like, that's the stuff that I'm focused on. Like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to take all my notes, because like, I'm a little out of my comfort zone compared to, like, you know, a $25 training I do online, like,
which you probably don't finish because yeah.
It's like, I'll do it later. Like, you know, I at least have it, you know, and I have a lot of those, you know, like cheaper trainings where I'm just like, I haven't even completed it compared to the actual training I did with them, where I spent money and I went there and it was 1,000% worth it. Just like yoga teacher training too. Like when you're spending the money on it, like that was so worth it to me.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I did subconsciously at the time, but I'm glad that I did. I had the option when I did my YTT to do a 3-month, or it was a 2-month fast track, or a 6-month longer spread out training. And I chose the 6-month because I was like, okay, yoga is a gradual process. I want this to slowly seep in. Looking back now, that's the best thing I could have ever done because
Right.
because that's exactly, like, it was never the money, and it never is the money. And if you are selling, like, the best advice I can give anyone who's in anything, in any business, in the wellness space, not in the wellness space, it is never about the money. If someone tells you that, hey, this is too expensive for me, your program is too expensive, it's not the money. You didn't show them the value, because people don't buy what you're selling. People buy the benefit they're going to get from what it is that you offer.
Yeah.
If you can't paint the benefit as a cohesive story or cohesive picture, no one's going to buy shit from you. You have
Right?
to,
Yeah.
you have to show the benefit in terms of what it is for them. And the best marketers and the best people do that. Yoga, it sells itself because people are now talking about the benefit, but you now not charging for it is actually undervaluing what you're giving other people. And they're not going to get the same benefit. And here's the thing, you're going to give it to them for free. You're going to have this great class where you have all this stuff prepared. They're not going to get anything out of it. Then they're going to go to your competitor. Your competitor is going to charge them, give them 1/10 of what you prepared for them, but they're going to be like, that's my person.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're going to listen to everything he's saying and just really absorb it. Yeah. That's great advice. It really is.
That's with everything in life, really. It comes down to your own, and it's a way to tie it back into mindset too. It's your own problem with currency. That is the problem, not what you're charging someone else. Because what you think of as a lot of money to your client could be nothing. You don't know that. And anything that you say that you think you know is just you basically imposing your own belief on them.
Interesting. Yeah, it is.
So if you go, oh, $100 for a workshop is expensive, but then the other person goes, $100 is nothing. What are you talking about? You're then imposing the belief, and vice versa. It goes the same way. And another way to frame it, which is what I coach people through or talk people through when they're thinking in terms of offering some sort of wellness program or product because of the nature of what it is. They go, oh, how can I charge someone for an hour yoga class? Well, what benefit does that person get from that yoga class? So if you were to ask me and say, how can you charge $3,000 for a yoga retreat? And I would say, well, here are the people who have come on a retreat. Here are the testimonials. One girl on one of my retreats overcame an eating disorder, which transformed the rest of her life. So I'm saying you came on a yoga retreat for this reason, but you actually got this benefit out of it, which was a complete byproduct of attending a yoga retreat, which has now transformed the rest of your life. How can you put a number on that?
Right?
How can you say, okay, you can get better for this price? What is that? That's then you imposing on someone else.
Yeah, that is, I love this stuff. It's true. It's true. Like currency, it's a mind state. It really is a mind state. Yeah.
I'm sure you see it a lot too in like the financial sector and things like that as well, because everyone has their own conditioning or beliefs on where things are supposed to go, how it's supposed to be, what it's supposed to cost. And it's all different across the board, you know?
Yeah, it is. I mean, money has been one of the things that I've been working on for a while. Like I do a subconscious reprogramming. I've been doing it since, maybe like almost 2 years now. But that has like helped so much just with my mind state, just because it is like in your subconscious mind about money and value and things like that. So it really is it's a practice. You know, this like you're saying, it's like a practice. You got to practice, good money mind state. And especially with, like a new yoga teacher or someone that wanted to do retreats or someone that wants to make a business, they love teaching, they love sharing their practice. And why wouldn't you want to do that all the time, right? On retreats or doing what you want, you're gonna have to charge for it. Like you're going to have to charge for it.
Well, it needs to be sustainable, one, for you. And two, if you recognize that by you charging, people are going to get more value out of it, then by you not charging is doing the clients you are saying that you want to help a disservice. So by you not charging, you're actually hurting them rather than helping them.
Right. Yeah. And it's weird to think of it that way. It's weird to think of it until you just like change that mind state and you're like, oh, okay.
Money is infinite. Your time is finite. And most people think of it the opposite. Money, if you don't believe money is infinite, look what happened in 2020 where they printed another 30% of right? Money is infinite. Your time is finite. And then to even compound that further, people say time is your most valuable commodity. I would say no, energy is. Because your time is finite, but the amount of energy you give to that time is what matters. You can be present in a place, but not give energy to that place, and your mind can be elsewhere. If you are present with someone like me with you right now, consciously thinking about this conversation, that is then giving you my energy as well as my time, which is far, far, far more valuable than any dollar sign you can attribute to anything.
100%. And it's very difficult to do. Like I've been practicing it myself, just being like presence and listening.
Oh, and then something comes up and you're like, I'm over here now.
Yeah. Like, well, in acting classes, like listening is like so important. And that's what I'm learning. Like in improv, it's like, oh shit, like I need to not fucking worry about what I'm going to say next, like my line or whatever, improv line, and just like listen to what this, person has to say. And then I can, once they tell me what they're saying on their line, then I can figure out what to say on my next, thing. So it's like, it's so difficult, but it's like such an important practice is just to be present and like listen.
Have you played Yes and yet?
Yes and I don't think so. How does it go?
So in an improv situation or in like a scene, you would say, you have a red, or I like your red hat. And then most people in an improv or an acting scene would say, they would negate exactly what you just said. You're like, my red hat's not that great. What about this? That's not propelling the scene or the conversation in any way. If you said, I like your red hat. Yes, it's a great red hat. And I think it fits my head perfectly. Now you've just heightened the stakes and you've continued the conversation.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So if you think about life in that sense, where you're trying to actively listen, and I mean, acting is actively listening with a different set of given circumstances. That's all acting is. When you are acting or actively listening, I should say, you are trying to further propel the conversation. So by you responding with a negative only breaks someone down, but by you responding with a positive only builds them up. And we can get into how the brain responds and the different frequencies and things like that in your brain. But if you think of that, which I say every single person in the world should take an improv class, because if you speak and breathe and you talk to other people, it will help you in life. And I'd say my acting degree is the best business degree I've ever gotten. If you understand that, and you understand that you can propel the conversation by saying yes and in everything that you do. Yes and blah, 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 blah. Rather than taking what someone says and rejecting it as their idea rather than your own and taking the conversation that way. You can do this in every, and I need to work on my own listening because I get stuck on my own head all the time. And I'm like, I don't like where your thought is. Let's change this kind of thing.
Right. It's a challenge. It's a practice. Like listening is really a practice. And I'm glad you said that people should take an improv class, because I feel that way too. I mean, I took the improv class because my teacher, my meditation, like hypnotist teacher, like he told me to go take go take a improv class, because you'll learn, you'll learn how to control your own state, like your emotional state, because he was saying like that's like a Jedi trick. Like if you can learn how to control your own emotional state and be able to turn it on, turn it off, then like you can influence like other people and just influence the energy in the room and stuff. And taking the improv class has helped me out so much. You get out of your comfort zone to go talk in front of people, which is terrifying for most people. It was terrifying for me. I didn't even want to go to the first class. But then just like the warm-ups to improv, and I'm sure you did warm-ups in acting, but like I was so like chill after doing a couple warm-ups that I was like ready to go. So just like almost like yoga, you do like your little warm-up, you do your sun A, sun B's, and you hit it with the good shit. Just like anything. You do a little warm-up, then you're good.
Yeah. I mean, you can take that literally any way. Like everything's connected to each other and everything's interconnected. Acting is a form of yoga if you boil down what yoga actually is. And if you think of it that way, then everything that you do or everything that you approach, if mindful about it, can be yoga. I mean, because yoga, most people think of as asana, as like the physical movement. But if you really boil down to what yoga is just a desire to better yourself. And if everyone lives in this mindset of all I want to do in life is better myself, and in turn, that will better everyone that is surrounding me, we'd be a much happier society if people just thought like that, Yeah.
Yeah. If people just thought of bettering themselves, just self-care, the world would be such a wonderful place. Come on, everybody listening. You better invest in some self-care. We need to make the world a better place right here, right now. And I want to know next. So what is the future looking like? Like, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years?
So prior to this little thing called the pandemic happening, I was planning on opening a studio, and it got put on the back burner, but it was a blessing in disguise because of what came out of, the past year is probably the most productive year I've ever had in my life. So right now it's just continuing to grow and scale the consulting as well as our media division with Synchronicity. And now that retreats are coming back, adding retreats back onto the books. But I think I want to build a home for people that think the same as us, and to have these conversations on a bigger, more societal level. And I think that the way I can do that is by building a home for people to go to. So within the next, I say 3 to 5 years, but it'll probably be much quicker than that, just given my track record. Right. And so opening that, and then within the next 10, having 1, if not 2 retreat centers that are Synchronicity retreat centers, 1 in Bali and possibly 1 in Costa Rica for people to go to and connect with themselves and have these important conversations with themselves so that they can then have them with the world, because everything that we do, it really is a ripple effect. And you make one decision and you think that doesn't have any impact on other people, but then like look at a child. The child sees how someone reacts and then they grow up to be that person. Humans and adults as well are the same way. You see how someone reacts and you either subconsciously connect with or reject that view of the world. So if we can create environments, or like I like to call it like adult playgrounds, where people can live in their truth and live more authentically, we're going to create a happier place for all of us to live in. And I think my calling now is to create those places, to create those communities, which is the reason I first started retreats, to connect with people deeper. And I realized the importance of what it was that I was doing and the people and the transformation that people were having from them. Now it's just, how can I make that how can I continue to grow and scale that and continue to build that community? And I joke all the time with my close friends, but I honestly believe that Synchronicity will be synonymous with like how Virgin is in all of these different markets, but Synchronicity and health and wellness, in kind of all encompassing health and wellness. mind, body, spirit, soul, everything that goes into creating and living in this kind of heightened awareness, and always bringing us back to that question, why, and understanding everything that it is that I personally want to grow up and be, per se. And I know a lot of people are starting to catch on to this, and they're looking for places like that, and they don't exist just yet.
Yeah, they need it. They need exactly what you want to put out there. You know, a home, a place. Have synchronicity yoga in Bali, just a place that's open. They can go year round. That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
You go to your Starbucks and you see synchronicity yoga right here, just everywhere. Right. How cool. I want to know, for the listeners out there, like say if they're just starting, like out as a yoga teacher, and then they see your website and then see everything that you're doing and they're inspired. Like, what would you give them? Like, what one piece of advice that you would give them to get started, like on a path, like how you're doing?
To get started teaching, or to get started in business?
It's like a business, like pretty much like what you're doing. You got your website, you got podcasts, you got retreat. You know, like how would they basically get started in building a brand like you built?
I mean, it's a case-by-case thing, because it depends on what they want to build. But I think the best thing that anyone can do is just take action. Whatever it is that you think you want to do, try it. If you think you want to teach weekly classes, try that for a period of time, and then revise and see how it is connecting with you, or how it resonates with you. And if you then don't like that, don't be so convinced that that's the way things need to be, that you have to then say, well, I have to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this. Because there's and the way the world is shifting is you can accomplish anything, and you can have, like, it doesn't need to be 1 leads to 2 leads to 3. You can have a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, some oregano over here, and you can create this kind of concoction that is your life. And an interesting conversation, and I think a way to kind of tie this all together, was a conversation I had on my podcast with a friend of mine, Danny Pomplun, who's opening a yoga studio in San Francisco. And I brought up the question that we always talk about balance, that you need balance in your life. You need work hard, play hard. You need balance. And my argument was that balance is like basically mediocrity, because if you have balance, you're doing half-ass. You can never, like, you know, it was like balance is just an excuse for mediocrity. And he goes, well, wait a second. What if you thinking that you need to have balance is really just you labeling everything that you do in your life? I'm Kevin, the retreat leader. I'm Kevin, the business owner. I'm Kevin, the podcaster. I'm Kevin, the yoga teacher. Those are all different labels, but by segmenting them is actually causing myself more work. I'm creating more work for myself, because I'm having to like delineate when I'm this person, when I'm this person. But if you think of it as he used a spider web, I think of a trampoline, and you are the ball, like a bowling ball and a trampoline. You roll around the trampoline, and you're always everything, but you're just more of one thing at a specific certain time. And when you think of that, it's not finding balance, but it's filling your life with everything that you enjoy. The only way for you to discover what it is that you enjoy is to go and experience everything that you think you might enjoy. So if you're starting out teaching yoga, go teach yoga. Go see if you want to teach. Like, how does anyone decide what style of yoga they want to teach? Right. They try them all, and then they see which one resonates with them. Where did this people need to learn to play, to experiment, and to test. There is no such thing as failure unless you quit. And the sooner you get that through your head, the sooner you're going to be successful. Because when you reframe failure as testing and discovery and figuring out why you do the things you do and questioning everything in your life, the sooner you're going to find happiness and fulfillment, because you'll be actively creating the life that you want.
Mic drop right there. I think we're BFFs after this podcast. So
I agree. I think
awesome. Like it's exactly the advice. Like, yes, action.
I like these podcasts because I was telling my girlfriend the other day that podcasting and having these conversations has turned into my therapy.
It is. Yeah, it is, because even like, during the pandemic, right? It's like, who are you talking to? Like there's not a lot of communication, not a lot of people. And then you can actually get on a podcast and like have a good conversation, hour-long conversation with like-minded people about stuff like you really want to learn about, Like I learned so much today on this podcast from what you shared. I fucking thank you for it. And I'm sure the listeners like love you for it too. Where can everybody find you?
First off, you are very, very welcome. And it's my pleasure entirely. So anytime you want to rap or have a round 2, 3, vice versa on mine as well, we'll get you back on there too. So to connect with me, the kind of all encompassing is synchronicity.yoga. That links to everything from the podcast, the blog, the retreats, consulting, media, everything like that. Synchronicity.yoga. Or just Kevin Wathey on Instagram. Shoot me a DM, say what's up. Let me know what value you got out of listening today. And if there were any specific points that resonated with you or connected with you, I'd love to hear that. And I love chatting with people. So feel free to reach out.
Light up his DMs, everybody. Slide into his DMs right there. Gave it to you. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on. I can't wait to get this out for everybody, to hear, to listen. And then if anybody's out there, if anybody has questions, send it on over to Kevin. I'll throw everything in the links in the description so you can all check that out. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on. Any last words?
No, Brian, I appreciate what you're doing and how you show up in the world. So thank you for creating the content that you do and being authentic and vulnerable in the process.
Oh, thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it. We're going to have to meet up soon.
100%.
Namaste, brother.